Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to 69 Minute News. I wanted to go ahead and film this semi short video here because, with everything going on with Doge and with President Trump and all that, you're going to hear a whole lot of stuff about Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 with the Supreme Court and everybody getting involved. And I wanted to go ahead and film this so that I can make sure that everybody knows when they're talking about Article 1, they're talking about the powers of the House and the Senate. When they're talking about Article 2, they're talking about the powers of the executive branch or President Trump. And when they're talking about Article 3, they're talking about the powers of the Supreme Court and the lower courts. So let's go ahead and get into this. I went ahead and went to the National Archives, to the Constitution of the United States transcript. So, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. That is what you call the preamble, folks. So, Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Section 2, that's the senators and the representatives. Section 2, the House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. So what that means is with the House of Representatives, they serve a 2-year term. And then every 2 years, they serve a 6-year term. Every 2 years, there's a new election for 1/3 of the House of Representatives. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state in which he shall be chosen. So that means you have to be a U.S. citizen, not born here, but be a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years, and you have to live in the state where you were elected at. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole numbers of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all persons. So, because we don't have slavery anymore, the 3/5 clause is basically null and void by the 14th Amendment. So it doesn't count Native Americans who live on a reservation, but it does count all the other cities and counties. And you get represented by population. It gets into that here in a moment. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States and within every subsequent term of 10 years. This talks about the census. So it has to have been done within 3 years of the first meeting, and then now it's every 10 years after that. In manner as they shall by law direct. The number of representatives shall not exceed one for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least one representative, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. So that tells you how many, the population of all of the 13 colonies prior to the expansion into the 50 states we have now. When vacancies happen in the representation of from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. So that means the governor or whoever is appointed by that state will fill in any vacancies of anybody who leaves office prior to their 6-year term being up. The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment. So these are the ones who actually impeach the president. The House of Representatives do, or any other elected representatives such as Anthony Fauci or, actually, sorry, not elected, but appointed, someone who was actually voted on by Congress to take that position, such as judges and stuff like that, secretaries of state. Section 3. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. So what that is, sorry, I messed up a little bit. Trying to think. So yeah, House of Representative, 2 years term. Senate, 6-year term. And the Senate initially was actually supposed to be picked by the legislator of the state that they came from. So here in Texas, the governor and the Congress here in Texas would have chosen our state senators, but then there was an amendment made to change that to where they're elected just like the representatives. Immediately after they shall be assembled in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes. The seat of senators in the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the 2nd year, and the 2nd class in the expiration of the 4th year, the 3rd class at the expiration of the 6th year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year. Sorry, got ahead of myself, get in over my skis a little bit. House of Representatives is a 2-year term. Senate is a 6-year term. Let's see. So that 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year, and if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments until the next meeting in the legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state for which he shall be chosen. So, got to be 30, got to be a U.S. citizen for at least 9 years and inhabit your state. The Vice President of the United States shall be the President of the Senate, but shall not vote unless they be equally divided, which is why Vice President Vance voted for Pete Hegseth, because the vote was 50-50. The Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate. The Senate shall choose their other officers and also a President pro tempore in the absence of the Vice President, or when he shall exercise the office of President, of the United States. So that means that whenever J.D. Vance is out, they appoint somebody to take his place and vote for him if necessary. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. So in order to actually be impeached, if you are such a person such as Pete Hegseth, who's the secretary, that can be done by 2/3 of the House. 2/3 of the Senate. However, if it's the president, only the Chief Justice can preside over that trial, and then still 2/3 vote. Sorry about all the yawning. I did not sleep well last night, or any night really. Anyway, Section 4. Get a drink. Section 4. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. So that means, like they did with the senators, and they changed it to where they're elected, but they still have to be chosen within their own state. Congress can't say if you are a senator from Hawaii that you could be chosen in Florida. You still have to be chosen within your own state. The Congress shall assemble at least once every year, and such meetings shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. I wish they stayed by this. The country would run a whole lot better, and we would be in a lot less debt than we are now if Congress only met once a year. But now they just basically permanently live in Washington once they get elected. Section 5. Each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day, and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. So they can kick you out with a 2/3 vote, which I don't know if that's ever happened. Let's take a look. In the entire history of the United States Congress, 21 members have been expelled, 15 from the Senate and 6 from the House. Of these 21 members, 17 were expelled for supporting the Confederate States in 1861 and 62. That makes sense. So that means there were 4 other people that were expelled outside of that time. Let's see. Okay, Section 5. Each house shall be the judge of elections, returns, qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall shall constitute a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. So not everybody has to be there, but they can all be compelled to show up at one time. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. Okay, we already went over that. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings and from time to time publish the same, expecting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy, and yeas and nays of the members of each house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered into the journal. So that just means that they have to record all their votes. Neither house during the session of Congress shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place than that in which the 2 houses shall be sitting. So when they want to take their vacations, it has to be voted on by both if it's going to be more than 3 days, and it's going to be all of them. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out to the Treasury of the United States. They shall, in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses and in going to and returning from the same. And for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. That explains a whole lot of the poor behavior you hear happening out of Washington. Be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session. And how many people you hear about coming in drunk to cast votes and stuff like that. They don't face any consequences for that kind of stuff, so shameful. No senator or representative shall, during the time in which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emoluments whereof shall have been increased during such time, and no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. So you can't be a senator and a representative, you have to be one or the other. So Section 7, all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. So they have to be brought up for a vote within the House of Representatives first, but senators can introduce them. They just have to go to the House first before they can come back to the Senate to be voted on. Every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it become law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approves, he shall sign it. But if not, he shall return it with his objections to the House in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. So that's the presidential veto. If such reconsideration, 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent, together with the objections, to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered, and if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law. So what that's saying is the president can veto a bill, and when it goes back to the House and Senate, if they both agree by a 2/3 majority in each house to go ahead and pass that bill, then it's law without the president's signature. But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the person voting for and against the bill shall be entered on the journal of each house respectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the president within 10 days, Sundays excepted, it shall have been presented to him. The same shall be a law in like manner as if he had signed it, unless the Congress by their adjournment prevents its return, in which case it shall not be a law. So if the president gets a bill, keeps it for more than 10 days, except Sundays, then it becomes a law. Okay? Doesn't have to sign it unless the House is in recess at the time. So if they're on vacation or whatever, then those days don't count either. So at the end of the 10 days, it doesn't become a law. It just basically the time stops until they re-adjourn. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the concurrence of the concurrence of the Senate and House of Representatives may be necessary, except on a question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him, or being disapproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and House, according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. That is basically redundancy from what I just explained. Section 8. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts, and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So this is taxes, duties, and fees within the country. Okay? This is not ones that are coming from overseas. These are ones from within the country. To borrow money on the credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among several states and with the Indian tribes, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States, to coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign currency, and fix the standards of weights and measures. Now, it says they have the responsibility to coin the money, but it does not say that the president doesn't have the authority to stop coining the money. So when he signed the executive order to stop making pennies, and he said Congress is going to have to follow up, he does have the authority to tell the Federal Reserve to stop, but in order to keep it that way, Congress has to go through and make a law saying that we're no longer manufacturing pennies. But the president does have the ability to stop them because they are within the executive branch. But in order for that to maintain being a rule of the nation, Congress has to go through and tell them to stop and do not do it anymore. To provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States, which is funny because the people who actually provide that are the Secret Service. So they're the ones who actually not inspect, but goodness, what is the word? They're the ones who actually do the investigations for counterfeiting and arrest people for that. To establish post offices and post roads, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. This is the Patent Office. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. So whenever they do have congressional hearings where they are literally trying people, it's before, if the Supreme Court comes in and says, no, you didn't have the right to do that, or we're going to go ahead and reverse your ruling on that, they can do that. So they are inferior to the Supreme Court. So when it comes to tribunals, they are not as high up. So they can be easily overruled for that. To define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. To declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. So, in order for the United States to actually legitimately be involved in a war, Congress has to actually declare that we are in a war. The president, as the commander-in-chief, can send troops over to assist another country for paperwork purposes, for securing that country's land, not going overseas. So theoretically, we could send troops over to Ukraine to help in Ukraine, but they cannot be involved in a push into Russia right now, because then that would be going to war. By sending troops over into Ukraine, that would be just assisting a friend of the nation. However, while they're active in a war, Russia could take that as a declaration of war and then come after us, which is why we haven't sent troops over there. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to the use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. So whenever they say we're going to go ahead and fund the war effort, it has to be every 2 years. They can't say, all right, we're going to go ahead and fund this war that's going to take 20 years and not apportion any more money to it, because once they do that on year 1, they have to do it again on year 3 or the money stops, theoretically. To provide and maintain a navy, to make rules of the government and regulation of the land and naval forces, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. So it was their responsibility, which is why Trump reached out to Pelosi on January 6th, actually January 5th, 2020, to see if she needed National Guard, and she declined it. To provide for organizing armies and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authorities of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. To exercise executive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as may, by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States, and to establish like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful bindings. This is what established Washington, D.C. And this is why Washington, D.C. is 10 square miles. It's not very large. There are bases and stuff around that we maintain, and they may actually overflow that 10 square mile area, but this is why we can do that. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or office thereof. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. So what that means is before 1808, they can't stop anybody from coming into the country, but anybody who does can be taxed up to $10 each. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. No capitalization or other district tax shall be laid unless the proportion of the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue of the ports of one state over the other, nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties in another state. This all talks about how states can't charge each other for transport in there, and the Congress can't maintain that. Say if you wanted to take a ship from Georgia to South Carolina, they can't say that you're going to have to pay a charge or a fine to be able to do that. No money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, Any regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. Excuse me. This is where the power of the purse comes in. And this is what Doge is doing right now, is they're actually going through. You're going to hear a lot of crying about firing of inspector generals. They're the ones who are supposed to let Congress know that, hey, waste, fraud, and abuse is happening. This is what's happening here. This is who's doing it. We need to put a stop to it. But they're not doing that. So either they're making money off that, or they're just not clear what their job is. But this is what Doge is doing. This is why the president fired all the inspector generals that he has so far, because they found that they weren't doing their job. So he's just trying to make sure that an account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. The president's trying to make sure that gets done. Although that is not part of his enumerated power. So that is, I can see where they would scream constitutional crisis in this part. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatsoever from any king, prince, or foreign state. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin, a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. Excuse me. Goodness. So basically, we're not a kingdom, and no state can be a country of its own, pretty much. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any impost or duties on imports or exports, except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws, and the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports and exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of Congress. So the ports down in Houston, they can't impose any further taxes or any further charges than what's necessary to be able to inspect the ships and cargo and stuff like that. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with the foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of a delay. And this is why Governor Abbott here in Texas could activate the National Guard and take them down to the border to do paperwork and help Border Patrol that way, but they couldn't actually work the border to secure it. Article 2, this is the section about the President. Section 1, the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and, together with the Vice President, chosen from the same term, be elected as follows. Each state shall appoint, in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct, a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So in order to be an elector, you cannot work for the United States, and you have to have enough electors per state to equal the amount of senators and representatives that you have. So when people are talking about how the Electoral College is unfair, how you have states that have a couple people like Montana versus states that have millions of people like California or Texas, it's not fair that they get the same number of votes. They actually don't. They get the same number of votes as they have appointed senators and representatives. So they get 2 votes for each senator, and they get 1 vote for every 30,000 people within that state. So California actually gets more votes than Montana. So it's actually a little bit off that way, but it's better that way because the states where more people are should have more of a say over what their government does, But this is what makes us a constitutional republic and not a democracy, because we don't, in the instance of the 2016 election, where Hillary got more popular votes than Trump did, Trump won more electors than Hillary did because he actually won more states. And by being able to count the states that way, that actually makes it more fair, because you have the majority land-wise of the country that's actually saying, yes, we want him, rather than the majority of the people themselves. Because if that were the case, New York, California, Florida, Dallas, and Austin, and Houston, that would be the entirety of the elections. Nobody else would have a say in it, because there's so many people in those areas that everybody else's vote wouldn't count. If they all vote one way, nobody else would even have a say in it. So that leaves out 46 states. So by doing it this way, it makes it a much more fair process. So each state shall appoint in such manner the legislature may... Okay, already read that. Electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for two persons, for whom one at least shall not inhabit at the same state with themselves. So that means the president and the vice president cannot be from the same state. And they shall make a list of the persons voted for and the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be the President, in such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if there be more than one who have such majority, and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose by ballot one of them for President. And if no president have a majority, then from the 5 highest on the list, the said House shall in like manner choose the President. But in choosing the President, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having one vote. A quorum of this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and the majority of all states shall be necessary for a choice. In every case, after the choice of the President, the person having the greatest number of votes of the electors shall be the Vice President. But if there should remain 2 or more who have equal votes, the Senate shall choose from them by ballot the Vice President. Okay, so what that means is when the electors vote, if it's a tie, then the House and Senate get to vote. But they can only have one voice per state. So all the representatives have to get together and they have to agree on one. And then whenever they cast that one vote, 2/3 vote, that person gets to become the president. Same goes with the vice president. If the vice president, because you can vote for, you don't have to vote for both. Or at least you didn't back then. If the vice president has the same number of votes, then is a tie, then same thing. The Senate can vote. So if Trump Vance ran, okay, and it came down to where the House and Senate have to vote, and then say Trump wins the presidential vote, and if Vance and Walz tied, then it could conceivably be a Trump-Walz presidency right now. The Congress may determine the time of choosing of the electors and the day in which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States. So, November 2nd, every year. Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors and the day in which they shall give their votes. Let's see, no person except a natural-born citizen or citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of the Constitution shall be eligible of the office of president. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained the age of 35 and be 14 years resident within the United States. So, you have to be 35 to be the president, and you have to be a natural-born citizen. In case of the removal of the president from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of said office, Joe Biden, the same shall devolve on the vice president, and the Congress may by law provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability, both of the president and vice president, declaring what office shall then act as president, and such officers shall act accordingly until disability be removed or a president shall be elected. So, if the president is declared unable by the vice president, they can be removed from office. And then if the president and vice president are declared unable by Congress, then they can choose their own president. So it is possible that they could have declared Kamala could have declared Biden unfit and did the 25th Amendment on him and got him out. Then Congress could have came in and declared Kamala unfit, gotten her out, and put in Pelosi or whoever. The president shall, at stated times, receive for his services a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall be elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them. So, a salary has to be chosen for the president. It cannot change while he is in office. And then he also cannot receive any other monies from any other states. Before he entered to the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath of affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. The President shall be the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into actual service of the United States. He may require the option in writing of the presidential officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject related to the duties of the respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. So, when they impeached the Secretary of State, Alejandro Mayorkas, Biden could not have pardoned him for that, so that impeachment stays on his record. However, with the other impeachments that Biden did, that is something he could do. Maybe. They're still talking about taking that into court to see if a blanket pardon can be done, because that is not in here. He shall have the power, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, to make treaties, provide 2/3 of the senators present concur, and he shall nominate and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and counsels, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. But the Congress may by law vest the appointment of each inferior officers as they think proper, in the President alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. The President shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess by the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. So, with all the hearings and everything that we had where they grilled Tulsi Gabbard and RFK and Pete Hegseth and all of them, that is the advice and consent part of the Constitution. Now, there was talk before all this started, after Trump got office, that they could, Mike Lee, I believe that's who it is, could have called the Senate into recess, and the president could have gone ahead and done a recess appointment of all of his cabinet members, but they would still, whenever the Congress got back into session, they would still have to go back through the confirmation again. Section 3. He shall from time to time give the Congress information on the State of the Union and recommend their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, on ordinary occasions, convene both houses, or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them, with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and shall commission all the officers of the United States. So that means the president can appoint judges and appoint his cabinet and all that. They go through the advice and consent. Great. He also has to give a State of the Union, but it does not have to be an address to Congress. It can literally just be a letter. State of the Union's fine, or State of the Union is this, and he lists everything out, hands it to him, you're done. Or he can actually have both houses convene and talk to them that way, which is typically what we do now. And he also has the right to accept foreign ministers in, like he did with Prime Minister Modi and others at the White House. And so that is absolutely his prerogative to be able to meet with all the leaders of the world. Let's see. And he shall commission all the officers of the United States. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. So when they impeached President Trump 2 or 28 times, however many it was last term, he was impeached but not convicted of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. That's why he continued in office and why he was able to run again. Article 3, this part is about the judiciary branch. Section 1, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall, at stated times, receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. So, with this, it basically states they're lifelong appointments, and that Supreme Court and the other courts below them, so all the inferior courts or the state courts, those are what the president can suggest, and then Congress does advice and consent. Goodness, oh my Lord. Anyway, so as long as they're on good behavior, they can stay. But if they're bad, they get impeached. So Section 2, judicial powers, which is what they're talking about right now with some of the judges who are trying to stop DOJ, because they're actually overstepping their boundaries because they are doing full blanket injunctions and stopping everything happening within the country when they're an inferior judge, which means they're only over a certain area of the country, not the whole thing. So articles of impeachment have been entered for a couple of them. Heard about that this morning. Section 2, the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made, or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors and other public ministers and councils, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state, claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. That just says who all they can try cases against. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and councils, and those which the state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have the original jurisdiction. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. The trial of all crimes, except in case of impeachment, shall be by jury, and such trial shall be held in the state where the said crime shall have been committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at a place or places as the Congress by law may have directed. So this says that the Supreme Court will handle stuff between states, and it will also handle stuff between individuals if they've gone through the process to get up there. So, but it first has to go through the inferior courts before it can go up to the Supreme Court. In cases where it is across many states and not just one state, then it goes directly in front of the Supreme Court. So they are talking about possibly going after Dr. Fauci on a state level, since he has been pardoned on a federal level. If many states get together, they could possibly take that directly into the Supreme Court. Section 3, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of two witnesses to the same overt act or on confession in open court. The Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person detained. So anybody who has committed treason can only be tried and convicted of treason by the Supreme Court. And sorry, it doesn't say Supreme Court, but by the courts, and have to have 2 witnesses or an open confession in open court. So those are the 3. We're just going to stop there with that. Those are the 3 different articles in the separation of powers within the 3. So when it comes to the different bodies that are underneath the executive branch, the different offices, such as the DEA and the Department of Education and all that, President Trump has the power to go over the books for all of them. Okay? But when it comes to apportioning money to those, that's an act of Congress. That is where they have to get into it so that they can say, yes, you can have this money. But they're also supposed to have these inspector generals that are telling us where all the money's going, and that's not happening. So this is what President Trump ran on, that he was going to go ahead and get in there and make sure that that all of our money is being spent wisely and that it's not being wasted. And Congress has been falling down on their job of making sure that this is taken care of. So hopefully now, once this is done, once Doge has gone through and just completely gotten rid of as much waste, fraud, and abuse as they can, hopefully now the Congress will actually do their job and make sure that all of our money is accounted for. So, sorry for all the yawning and everything through this. Like I said earlier, I don't sleep well, but I wanted to make this video so that you would understand whenever you're listening to the news and they're talking about Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, that's the different powers, so that you understand what it is they're talking about. Next time I'll try and be better rested, especially Friday when I do my weekly newscast. So, but for now, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. Let me know if I got anything wrong. Tell me what I can fix. And if you like the new background, great. If I sound better because of the new microphone, awesome. Let me know in the comments as well. And have a blessed day.